Good evening. I call this meeting to order at 5 p.m. Please join me in the Pledge of Allegiance. Ready? Begin.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you. All right, roll call. All directors are present. Moving on to agenda. Are there any changes to the agenda?
Yes, we'd like to remove the closed session at the end of the meeting.
Okay. May I have a motion to approve the agenda with changes?
I'll move the agenda with the changes.
I'll second it.
All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Thank you. Motion passes. The agenda is approved. Moving on to number 2, public comment. Are there any members of the public in person that have a public comment at this time? Would you step up to the podium?
My name's Jeff. I'm just wanted to make a comment about work that was done to the storm and the pipe that you had to add down Del Rosa. They haven't done a good job of bringing the road back to what it was. And I don't mean from the storm, I mean from the work that was done to dig up and repair the pipe that was damaged. There was a big hole, and there's still a hole in the road that if somebody drives into it, they're gonna be stuck. It's between Reagan's and Sheep Creek on Del Rosa. And this also brings up a question of, with the new regulations that the state has put on us with the garbage trucks, who's going to be making up for anything that they do to damage any of these roads that people maintain themselves? So.
Thank you. All right, any other public comment? No? All right, do we have anyone online that has a public comment?
We do have 2 guests online. Phone number 5652. Do you have a public comment at this time? If so, please unmute yourself. *9. They raised their hand, but they have not unmuted. One moment. Okay, phone number 5652, you need to press *9 on your phone to unmute yourself. Okay, call in user 1. Do you have a public comment at this time? Okay.
Okay, thank you very much.
Hi, Kim. This is Steve Kennedy. I'm listening in.
Okay, call in user 1 is Steve Kennedy.
All right, with no further public comment, okay, perfect. Sorry, it's the educator in me. I need to answer raised hands. All right, so we will move on to community reports. I don't see anyone in person, and it doesn't look like we have anyone online tonight. All right. So we will move on to agenda item number 3, consent items. Does anyone have any items they would like to pull? Okay. Is there a motion?
I'll move the consent items.
I'll second them.
Thank you. All in favor of the motion to approve the consent items, say aye. Aye. Any opposed? Thank you. The motion passes. No matters removed from consent. No presentations and appointments. So we will move on to agenda item 6A, presentation, discussion, and possible action regarding draft water rate study report. Ms. Lawrence.
Actually, Habib Isaac will be making the presentation on that.
All right, Habib, you can go ahead and present whenever you're ready. You can share screen.
Okay, will do. Just one second. Just go away. All right, are you able to see my screen?
Yes.
Okay. So tonight we're going to do a summary of the rate study of the 5-year financial plan that was recommended and in the draft cost of service report, as well as the corresponding rates. And also with the corresponding rates, we did make some rate adjustments in terms of the structure, and we'll discuss those as well. First, I want to go through the financial plan assumption. With our financial plan, we aren't assuming any growth, and that's common with all the other cycles we've done. Main reason because we don't want to rely on growth to occur to cover your revenue requirements, but on an annual basis, you would capture those new accounts as they come online, and then you can always update to see where you land compared to what we noticed to your customers. Also, I want to identify the fact that with our analysis, because of the reduction in Tier 3 usage, we actually, to be conservative, are showing that usage that did occur in Tier 3 of the last year, we included it in Tier 2, because we anticipate that that usage will go away, and then we're also eliminating the third tier, so then therefore, we're not assuming this higher level of revenue coming in that now, based on our structure change, will not be materialized. And I'll go into that a little bit more detail. And then with our expenses, not all expenses increase at the same rate. So we have many different inflationary adjustments that we can utilize, from benefits to salaries. When we talk about capital construction costs, and general cost is basically CPI. We monitor the construction cost index and the CPI for LA, but for this upcoming year, we're still keeping it at a high inflationary rate. But then after this year, for 25 and beyond, then it's going back to the 5-year average for both of those indices. And then with water supplies, those that, or when you do lease water from Mojave, if they increase their rates, then you just pass through those rates, any increases through the provisions of the pass-through in the government code. And then one last thing with water loss, we have 15% water loss, which means to serve a demand of down below with 22 acre-feet of sales. Then you need to account for water loss. That means you have to produce 2,588 acre-feet to serve that level of demand. And one thing we want to point out is, your free production allowance is ratcheting down based on the Mojave Water Agency. But you do have some carryover water that you could use in the first 2 years that then could allow you to not exceed your free production allowance with the carryover. And then in 26 through 28, then with this continuing to ratchet down, you will need to have some replacement water, which is basically imported water cost, so a higher rate of cost for that water supply. And there it is. So with those assumptions, we then are looking at your current position with your existing rates that customers are paying today. And when we look at your financial position, a couple of things we want to think about is we want to generate positive net income, comply with any debt covenants, fully fund your capital needs, and meet your reserve requirements. So this first chart shows you your operating position. The black trend line going across is your rate revenue that exists today. And then the red dashed line is your operating position. So you want to have your revenues over your expenses. So this shows that you're basically going to break even in 24. And then 25 on, you're going to see a slight operating deficit. And then a couple of additional comments. This does include the existing rates that have been approved for 24 through 26. That's why you see that black trend line have a little bump up, a little curve upward in 25 and 26. And it also includes $6 million in debt proceeds for the Civic Center. So that's being funded by the Civic Center. Those bond proceeds are already available. It's already been issued. And with CIP, we need to fund $18.6 million through 2028. So here's your capital funding by source. The light purple is the debt proceeds that you have available for the Civic Center, or at least water's portion of the Civic Center. It's not fully funded by the water enterprise. And then you have your other capital needs, and then that's on a pay-as-you-go basis. And then you have healthy reserves right now, but with those increased costs and the hyperinflation that has occurred, you will be then eating into your reserves to continue with your capital plan. So obviously that's not a sustainable long-term. So we just want to make sure that we are able to maintain your reserve balances above your minimum requirement, which is that red trend line. Here's the detailed capital plan that we received from the district, and there's been a little bit of rescheduling here and there to smooth out rates. On the left-hand side are the major projects, including Chromium 6, and then we have the Civic Center on the right-hand side, followed by your kind of typical R repair and replacement plan.
Can you hold for a minute? I believe there may be a couple questions.
Yes.
Did you have a question, Mark?
I just can't see it, so I was wondering if there was a page number that I could follow in here.
Habib, do you know in the actual rate study document what page number corresponds with the slide that you're currently showing?
We don't have the capital plan in this detail because this was part of your the budget that was approved. It was in that, but we roll it up when it goes into the report.
So that's the budget, that's the capital improvements plan in the budget?
Correct.
Okay,
Yes,
all right.
that is correct. So with looking at your current position, you have starting to project an operating deficit in 25, not meeting your debt coverage, and then your capital spending is reduced but still requires the use of reserves, and then no longer meeting your minimum reserve target as well by 2025. But to remedy that, the proposed financial plan, we're going to now increase revenues to be over your expenses, and then that would generate positive net income, which shows up in these gray bars. And then these positive net income then go towards your capital spending on a pay-as-you-go basis, and also make sure your reserves do not deplete and remain healthy as they are today. Your capital plan is the same as what I just showed you. It's 18.6 million. Then now your reserves are over that minimum requirement. You see a little dips here and there, but that's essentially because of how your capital plan is scheduled. And to achieve this, you need 16% revenue adjustments for the next 5 years. And this would replace your current rates that are that's been approved, that are on the books to go into effect in 25 and 26. With the cost, now that we know the amount of revenue that is needed with the long-term financial plan, we then see the total revenue requirement for coming from rates. So it already accounts for your operating, your debts, also the solar credits that offset some of your debt, and then other funding sources. You do have some offsets for your intertransfer of your property tax that is going to wind down, which has been part of the district board's policy to eliminate that in those future years. So that's on schedule. And then, so total amount that's coming from rates for 2024 is $8.1 million. And then I'm going to use this number to go through the cost of service analysis. And so, you know, in case there is another question, I can't see that, so just please interrupt me. So here are the rate components that make up your rate. On the left-hand side are your fixed charges, which is account services, which basically think of that as like your base charge to have an active account. Meter capacity is for funding like your capital, that a portion of it, then it gets spread based on the size of the meter. So those that have bigger size meters get charged more because they acquire more capacity in the system. We have the Chromium 6, which is not changing, it's remaining the same rate. And now on the right-hand side, we have your variable components with the new one of your purchased water, which is the lease water from Mojave, and that's expected to occur in 26 through 29. We have your groundwater, and we're also modeling your free production allowance reducing each year. And then delivery is just your operation cost to get it to the end user's taps. Peaking, which is accounting for how the usage isn't constant throughout the year. It increases during the summertime. So then we're allocating costs based on how customers use water in that manner. And then your water efficiency programs, which is a small dollar amount that gets allocated here too. Your fixed cost recover 56% of your overall revenue needs, which is right in line with where you are today. And then on the variable side, 44%. With those fixed components, this now shows you the dollar amounts. We have the account services, so it shouldn't change by meter size. It's all the same rate to have an active account. Then the meter capacity, this is where it does change, where the base is $23.52. And then 1-inch meter, take the $23.52, multiply it by the capacity ratio for 1 inch, 1.67, would then get you to $39.20. And the capacity ratios is based on gallons per minute of water flow that could go through that meter safely in comparison to a 3/4 inch meter. So as an example, a 3/4 inch meter is 30 units of water, 30 gallons per minute, whereas a 1 inch is 50 gallons. So 50 gallons divided by 30 gallons is 1.67. And then here are your existing rates and what the difference is. Most of your customers are 1 inch, so they'll see almost an $8 increase in their monthly bill.
Habib, can I stop you for just a second on that one?
Yes.
We had a constituent that was in here last time you were presenting this, and she had a question on why was it that we would charge her more for her fixed rate, even though she's a very conscientious user? And what you just said would explain that question to her, right? It's the 1-inch meter is what she has, and this is how we base that fee.
Yes, not all the fee, but it's very common for pretty much all water agencies to have some portion that's just flat or just having an active account. So the type of cost is like customer service billing, where the size of the meter doesn't matter. Anyone can call customer service. Your bills being generated doesn't, require more effort based on the meter size. But when you're, funding your capital plan or you have a portion of your field workers in here, that is where the size of the meter does matter. And those that have more, that's taking up more capacity in the system are paying more. And it ratchets up as you go into the bigger size meters. And the bigger size meters are primarily, I remember looking at back before, like schools and public agencies for these guys.
Okay, thank you. I think that answers her question perfectly. Thank you.
You're welcome. And then this is where we start getting into some of the rate structure changes that we proposed and recommended. So obviously the district, you're aware you're in adjudicated basin, your free production allowance continues to ramp down each year. So what we're doing with the cost of service analysis is we're actually modeling the ramp down every single year through 2029. So in fiscal year '24, you're seeing a 50% reduction in your water rights, with 5% annual reductions through '29, where you get all the way down to 25% reduction in your free production allowance. Basically, what that means is you get a certain amount of groundwater, it's going lower and lower, and then your demand doesn't really change. So then you have to bring in purchase water or lease water from Mojave to cover the demand from your customers. So what we're recommending with the rate structure is to have 2 tiers reflecting the groundwater rights, with tier 1 being the free production allowance to all customers, and we're doing that, we're allocating that evenly. And then tier 2 would capture any usage above your free production allowance. So for fiscal year 24 and 25, as I mentioned before, you have carryover water. So essentially, you don't need any leased water from Mojave for those 2 years. So in that instance, fiscal year 24 and 25, the water supply component for tier 1 and tier 2 is going to be exactly the same. And then for fiscal year 26 and beyond, that's where you do need leased water. And then the tier 2 water supply component will be a higher rate than tier 1. Any questions on that?
Yeah, Habib, those numbers are in the water rate study, the financial plan at existing rates. Well, there's a couple of places where it's listed. Yeah,
Yes.
you show that it's 0 for the next 2 years, and then you have 315,000 for water purchase for 26, 451,000 for 27, and it continues to grow as the ramp down continues.
That's correct. I think I have it right here.
It says it's table 12. I don't know what that is, but then below that you've got electricity leased water. Can you explain that?
Oh, sure. We just want to make sure, let me just go back to where I was real quick. So that's really our term, because your leased water is still groundwater, and all groundwater has to be pumped out of the ground. We're just making sure that the unit rate that we came up with based on your historical production is also being applied to now the leased water, because that's also coming out of the ground.
I'm confused about that. You're going to have to explain that to me. Again,
Sure.
because it doesn't make sense. We're going to pump the same amount of water. We just have to pay Mojave to pump some of it. But the pumping is going to be the same. It's not going to change.
Right, yeah, right,
So
exactly.
why
It's
is
not gonna change.
why is the power cost going to go up?
The power cost is not, we're just making sure that we're not missing the fact that the electrical cost is also, the unit rate for electricity is also applied to the leased water, because we're grouping the water between your free production and the amount that's leased, and we're making sure that the electrical is applied to both, because it's all water pumped out.
So that's.
It doesn't make sense at all. You have to explain it to me, because I don't understand. If you pump 2,000 acre feet, it doesn't matter whether you're leasing or you're paying Mojave for some of that, you're just pumping the same amount. So
That's correct.
in our budgets where we have an electric cost for pumping, that's not going to change.
Yeah,
Are you just,
we are not changing it besides the inflationary factor for energy costs. We are doing the same thing that you're saying. We're charging the same unit rate to all groundwater pumped, whether it's leased water or as part of your free production water.
Okay,
you just
so-
wanted to capture it separately so it shows up as a tier 2 cost?
We want to calculate it separately, so then we don't forget that when we come up with the supply cost for leased water, it's the leased water cost from Mojave as well as the electrical cost that will make up the tier 2 rate.
Okay, so then the cost won't change to the district, but you're shifting
Correct.
some of the power costs to the tier 2.
Yes.
Okay, All right, so that means that that's not an increase in the budget, the cost to the district. It's shifting, so whatever is shifted to the tier 2 is reduced elsewhere, correct?
Yes, so whenever we use your 2024 budget, and then in future years, we are increasing electrical costs. We are assuming that electrical costs will go up.
Well, yes, it's going up to 8% or, whatever it is, but.
Yeah, that's correct.
Whatever Edison does, but that, so it's not an increase to the overall cost, you're just shifting it to a tier 2. Okay, got it.
Yeah, so we could show what is the fully loaded rate of your free production water supply and the fully loaded rate of leased water from Mojave.
Just as long as that amount of power that you shifted is reduced in the other areas. Okay.
If I'm noticing that reduction in the line above that, is that correct?
We're on page 25 of the.
Mhm.
we're on
21 or
page
25, either one.
Of your study.
And I'm noticing electricity GW has it going up to 1.5, and then next year it decreases to 1.3. Is that the adjustment?
I'll have to escape out here and then go to my file, pull up the report.
Where is that?
Which one are
Here,
you?
I'll show you. Here,
Yeah, this
the
is,
electricity numbers, you
Yeah.
notice here, they're here, and then this one decreases. See the decrease? And then it's also in here.
okay, all right,
Yeah,
got it. Okay,
okay.
So collectively,
but
those two
they-
lines equal our total electricity.
right.
Okay.
Thank you for that
Got it.
question. That was definitely a good question.
Thanks for explaining it well, because it hit me at a moment. Thank you.
Okay, Habib, we
Okay,
have
David?
I'm sorry, we have a question, another question. Mr. Barnes?
So I have a couple of questions. I'm just trying to follow along on the packet that we have with what you're saying.
Yes.
Do you have somewhere that you actually spell out the amount of water that's going to be, you had percentages for how much the drawdown's going to be, but I'm just trying to figure out if there's somewhere that those figures are figures and not just percents.
Yes, there is a table in here that shows the reduction in free production allowance and then the makeup water we'd have to pay. There is a table, I don't know where
Is
it
that
is.
30, table 30?
Yeah, and I apologize. I should probably pull up my report while I just have my own screen here, so I can do that. Don't worry.
And then the follow-up to that is then, I'm just trying to figure out then the tier 1 and tier 2 allocation, because you're saying that so I was just trying to think through what those were based on actual numbers and not percents. That's where my first question was
Yeah,
coming
there
from.
are numbers in here, but
Yeah, and they're in there. Let me just open it up for you.
So I believe our free production allowance now is 2518, and at the end of the 5 years, it's going to be ramped down to 1582.
Acre feet?
Yes, acre feet, out of the total 5,000 that we own. And if there was no ramp down.
Sorry, what was the second number?
1582.
Okay.
And also on 38.
That's on, those numbers are on page 38, right? The table 30?
One of them's on page 65.
yeah, 38 is,
38 and 42.
Are you guys in the report?
yeah,
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay.
little page 38.
Let me
Okay.
just catch up to you guys.
So I did have a second question on one of the charts that was up really quickly, the proposed operating financial plan as opposed to the one that we're doing. So the black line projected revenue is above the operating expenses, which is good and valid. I'm just trying to understand why the gap widens so much by the end of the projections.
Because we have to buy water. That's basically it.
So that $4 million gap is because we're spending that money to buy water? So the buying water isn't included in operating expenses?
And it goes.
This is figure 8 on page 27 of the report.
27.
Sure, no problem. Let me get there so I could intelligently answer that question for you.
So it's showing that the projected revenue will be 15 million by 2028, but that
Yes,
the
correct.
operating expenses will be somewhere around 11 million? Is that?
Yeah, because this has no capital. This is just your operating. So then you need positive net income. This already includes all your water supply costs, which is all right here in this first section. And then you need this additional net income to then go towards your capital spending that isn't funded by debt, which is just the civic center, and to make sure that your reserves stay healthy and above your minimum requirement. Capital is not in here. Capital, it shows up under your capital replacement fund. So we see here, this right here, this net cash flow, this is the same numbers.
I'm sorry, what page,
This is table 17.
okay, I'm with you.
25.
Okay. From table 16, it's in the purple bar. That then flows into your operating reserve, which shows up in the second line of table 17. They're the same exact numbers. And then we make sure that you meet your minimum requirement for your operating reserve, and then the remainder transfers to your capital replacement. So these negative numbers can show up as positive in your replacement fund, and then this is where your capital expenses are coming out of. Then this is why you need that extra net income coming in to be able to cover your capital expense, still have a healthy reserve for ongoing capital in future years.
Okay, so then the capital expense, that's non-water related, or that's water related capital spending?
Oh, this is all the projects of your water enterprise.
Okay. I'm not sure I'm clear.
So
but
this 7 million includes the civic center. And then after that, then you have some Chromium 6 improvements and some other ones that I showed you on the presentation, which was
And this is all water.
this right here. It's all water.
It's just water only.
No
7
parks
million in
and-
water for the civic center?
That's the water's portion, then the other.
The portion that's coming from the water
Right.
revenues
Yes.
to pay for the civic center?
Yeah.
And then there's other portions
correct.
coming from Parks and Rec and General Fund.
Okay.
And then was it Director, I'm sorry, was it Bartley?
That was a member of the public, Mr. Barnes.
Oh, okay. Oh, Mr. Barnes. And was there another question besides that?
No, that was it. Thank you.
Okay. These are good questions. Thanks for bringing these up. Let me go back to where I was. And then we're right here talking about the change in the rate structure. So essentially, what this does is now we're saying that all customers are subject to the 2 tiers that we're recommending. So everyone gets their fair share of groundwater. Doesn't matter whether you're single family, commercial, whatnot, you have an X amount of groundwater, we allocate it to everybody evenly. And then if you go into tier 2, then that's where, not for these first 2 years, but for years 3, 4, and 5, you're gonna be paying a higher water supply rate for the least water hobby. So this shows the components that make up your variable rate. We have water supply. You notice that they're the same rate for 24. It's tier 1 and tier 2, as well as for 25, the same rate. And then delivery, peaking, and water efficiency. So the only difference these first 2 years between tier 1 and tier 2 is the peaking and the fact that your water efficiency was like 36,000 goes into tier 2 because those water efficiency programs are going to offset the higher usage. Irrespective if the program is for a rebate for inside, faucets or things of that sort, it's still overall going to reduce the total water usage of that customer. And then when we get to 26, 27, and 28, we're ratcheting down the groundwater that's available for tier 1 because of the ramp down. And then now you're going to notice that tier 2 rate, water supply rate, is now different because now this is the fully loaded rate of the leased water from Mojave, including electricity. And then now what's nice about this type of rate structure is, one, there's no customer classes. Two, it's primarily focused on the difference in water supply costs, which makes it very defensible. And then three, I would also say it's pretty elegant that it's then tying very nicely to what's occurring in the district and the fact that you're in adjudicated basin. And then here's the proposed fixed charges over 5 years. Then those are, and then here are the proposed variable rates where we show that residential doesn't have a tier 3 anymore. Essentially, we're just showing these for what the existing rates were, but really moving forward, you really don't need to have residential, commercial, and institutional. You just need to have all classes and then one set of rates, tier 1, tier 2. Any questions on that?
Hold on one second, Mr. Barnes.
I just have one question. So I understand the explanation for why rates need to go up for meters per meter size.
Yes.
Could you explain why they need to go up every year? Why isn't that some of that money just being funneled into the cost of water instead?
Oh, because then we want to keep the cost of service that we went through intact. So then it stays proportional. So then we keep it constant. So the rates in the future years increase at this proportional. So then the cost of service analysis we did for fiscal year 24, 25, 26 stays in line and doesn't change.
Okay, but I'm not understanding why the meter costs are going up.
The meter cost and the both are going to go up at the same rate.
So there's inflation, and there's the fact that every year after starting in 3 years from now, we're going to have to purchase or pay actually Mojave for more and more water.
I understand, but I don't understand
so-
why
and so-
paying more has to go into the meter size and the meter cost.
Sure. So we could say instead of phasing it in over 5 years of the 16%, you could do a one-time rate increase of like 50%, but that would be palatable. So it's being spread, it's being phased in over 5 years.
I think there's a bit of a misunderstanding. We're trying to keep the rate, the percentage that's of operating, that's under operating cost, that's under, at 50, was it 56% of the total? Under that, keeping the proportion of our amounts at 56%.
Coming from the fixed rate for the meters.
And the other 44 coming from rates. To keep that going at that percentage, the meter will have to go up at this rate along with the,
Yes.
the rates. Okay, so that I got that correct, okay?
Yeah.
Does that fit in a
Yeah,
bit of the
that
gap
is-
of what you're wondering?
Yeah,
Yeah,
I mean, I guess I don't
correct.
understand the why of that, but that's a different discussion, I think.
But I guess that is that part of the why. Otherwise, if you only increase the variable rates, then the district's fixed cost recovery would go down every year, which then would cause them to not have stable revenue and be very impacted from any change in reductions in water usage. Good example of that is probably this last year, 2023, it was a very wet winter. So they're able to minimize the revenue loss because they have over 50% of their recovery on the fixed side.
So as usage goes down, we're not out of funds to continue functioning, basically.
Right, or have to go back to the customer and say, oh, I'm
It's
out. We have to-
it's a
That's
stabilization factor, as my co-director said.
Yes, that is correct.
You have a
And
question?
norm now, before it used to be like, everyone wanted to get to 30%, but now with mandatory conservation in 2015, 16, I would say the average now is easily in the high 40s of where most districts are, if not even higher. But you're right in line with where most districts are landing these days. And then this last slide shows the customer impact. And even though we're seeing a 60% revenue adjustment, bill impact is actually less than that. And we're showing 9 units, 13, and 19. The 9 units is what your customers do in terms of the winter average. 13 is the annual average, and 19 is your summer average of your customers. But part of this, or why it's not equivalent to the 16%, is one, is also based on the meter size, and two, you're right now having all customers subject to the 2 tiers. So then that's causing like the commercial or non-residential to then pay a little bit more than what they were. So then that brings these percent increase, this bill impact a little bit lower.
So commercial and the other will be taking a bit more of the burden.
Yeah, probably just a little bit, just because in the first year we do a cost of service study, there's always some shifting that goes on based on the most recent usage trends. So yes, that is correct. And also another thing is you got rid of, all those growers that were primarily in the single family customer class. So that alone also shifts costs by the fact that single family's usage, especially in that higher tier, is going away. And I believe with that, that concludes my presentation. And I know there's been questions asked, but I'm more than happy to answer any further questions you may have. Or we can go to any questions you might have in the report.
Okay. Chuck? No? Yeah?
I just want to make a statement. I mean, the past board and the district did a great job acquiring water rights. I mean, we have 5,000 acre feet of water rights in the Mojave Basin. And Mojave Water Agency just started to ramp those down. Less than 50% we can use now. And by 2028, it's going to be even less than that. We have enough water rights, so everybody should be paying tier 1 rights. But with the ramp down, we can't do that. That's why we have to go to tier 2, and it's costing more for the water. And then he mentioned the hyperinflationary climate we have. We've all seen the price of fuel and everything else. That's hitting us like it's hitting all of you. It's very difficult to sit up here and go through this and consider the rate increases that we're looking at, but they are necessary after looking at everything you've looked at. And that's all I have to say.
Well said. Well said. Yeah. Yeah. It affects us just like it affects everyone else. And I actually did the exact computation on my water bill and that with the increase to the 11 cubic units at this time, when we're at 9 right now, even though there's an increase, it's only going to affect me by about $11 a month. And I know for some people, $11 is a lot, but considering the incredible work that our staff does to provide everyone, the essential water that they need. It takes a lot of time, it takes a lot of people, it takes a lot of effort, and it takes a lot of electricity and everything to do all these things. So I thank you for saying it that way. I appreciate it. Mark?
Yeah, I just, I had a couple of questions that I brought forward already, so I don't think I have any other questions except that if we can talk to Mojave, to the water master, and see if they'll stretch this ramp down out a little bit, that would help. But I know we've stretched it out to this point. I know that the other dairy is no longer in use, so I'm hoping that we can look at the water consumption in the basin, and maybe change some minds on some of this. Anyways, that's all.
Good. Deborah, anything else?
I'm thankful for the questions that were brought forward because they sorted a few things out for me. This is a hard one to go over. I'm still chewing on it and probably will be until the day we have the vote. It's a hard one. And Habib said the right word, and that's that hyperinflation that's happening. And I'm really hoping that you're correct and it slows down and goes back to a normal rate.
Yeah, and all of our clients have been impacted by this hyperinflation. Capital is just doubling, the capital cost of projects is just doubling. We have agencies up and down the state where we're seeing them do over 20% increases for multiple years. And that's not like one district, that's a few districts that are in that situation.
Well, I'll continue to chew on it until the moment of the decision. Thank you so much for bringing the information and answering our questions.
Thank you.
All right, so no further, Mr. Barnes?
Thanks, and these may be questions for the board more than anything. So first of all, I had a question on the drawdown. This drawdown is for the Alto sub-area, right? Or is it for a wider area than that?
Each sub-basin has its own draw, you mean the ramp down?
Yeah, the ramp down.
Each sub-basin has its own different ramp downs. And we did not, OSD did not have a ramp down for about 10 years. And then a new judge came in and the water master said that we should be ramping down, and so they just started ramping down.
But most of our wells are Alto, right? Not OSD?
No,
Or
it's OSD.
most of our wells are
Only
OSD?
one or two in Alto. The way to the east, the farthest
Right.
part of the district to the east is Alto.
Right.
We have some water rights there, but it's minimal.
Are there other districts that are impacted by the OS? I mean, we're the only district in the OSD drawing water, right? It's mainly users.
Sheep Creek,
Well, yeah, but they're not under Mojave adjudication.
some of their wells are. They're new
Well,
wells.
right. The newer wells.
That's why I said, we bought out the biggest dairy years ago in order to get water rights to postpone this. Another dairy has stopped, all the cows are gone.
Right.
So that production should start reflecting less production in the water master's annual report. So I'm hoping that we can stress that point.
The real question that I was getting to with these previous ones was, a lot of the wells that are drawing from the subbasin are user wells, or small farms and whatever. Are they also getting this ramp down, or is it just the district?
De minimis producers, 10 acre feet, are not subject to the adjudication.
Okay.
Anybody else theoretically that produces more than 10 acre feet would be charged by
Right.
Mojave Water Agency and Water Master. But I don't know if anybody's looking at it.
So I had a second question on capital projects. I'm just trying to understand, are capital projects like water projects, like new wells and things like that?
Pipelines, tanks, boosters.
Reservoirs.
But there's going to theoretically need to be fewer capital projects because we have a large number of wells and because we're going to be ramping down theoretically the amount of water that we're drawing, right? So could that be adjusting future issues with the rates because there's not going to be as much capital expenditure needed?
Well, if you look at our, in the engineering meetings, our capital, the sheets that we put out 10 years out, we push out a lot of these things as far as we can.
Yeah.
So for instance, I think the next tank we have besides this one up here is, what?
2028.
Yeah, 10 years out or something, or
Tanks.
8 years out, an additional tank.
Tanks,
And
that makes
that's
sense.
assuming that there's some type of growth over the next
Right.
5 to 8 years.
And those are
You have to
vertical.
account for it.
Yeah, those are vertical assets. You have all your buried infrastructure
Yeah.
too. And so you got to remember that it's, once you start putting a pipe in the ground or a service connection, a fire hydrant, it starts to wear or go out of, you know.
Oh, sure.
And
Yeah, no,
so-
I was just thinking that there've been a bunch of wells that have put in recently. So maybe there would be less of a need for capital, but the tanks make sense. Well, there's the big one and there's another one that's happening now, right? Whatever. Yeah.
Just one well
Okay.
for this district.
All right. So the last thing is less of a question and more of a comment. I just, I've said this before, but I just think that there should be more of an emphasis on getting people, especially considering the drawdown, to use less water in general and putting higher costs on the meters. I understand the desire to have an income that is set and measurable and reliable and you know it's coming in every year. But at the same time, it does not encourage people to use less water. If there was more of a higher water rate and less of an increase on the meter, then people would be encouraged to use less water, and then we wouldn't potentially be incurring the charges from the Mojave Water Agency, from leased water, and all that. That's not a question, that's a comment. Thank you.
Thank you. All right. Habib, thank you so much. We appreciate it.
Thank you. Thank you so much.
All right. So we are moving on to agenda item 6B, update on solid waste program. Ms. Sevi.
Let me get my screen shared. So it's a very brief update, kind of where we are right now. We've received 2,311 applications. 805 of those are self-haulers confirming their status as a self-hauler. The rest are CR&R customers. And then looking at a third quarter comparison, and mind you, we still have one more month to gather third quarter data for this year. You can see the growth in customers we've had in residential customers over the years. And it's trending 64 to 74% of district customers have CR&R service. It depends on if you use the census data for what a household is, or if you look at the total water customers, both Sheep Creek's and ours, to determine households. There are some properties that have multiple meters, which could account for the difference, but so I just did a range. And then we have food waste buckets in our office, and we're going to have some at Fun Days. So if you want to stop by the booth, you can get one of those. We have a compost class coming up. We've partnered with the Mojave Desert Resource Conservation District and Master Gardeners to immediately following our normal gardening class to have a compost workshop. And all attendees who pre-register, so call the district office or go online to our events page and register, you can get a composter, so one of these barrel compost tumblers, along with a free zero water waste tree. So allegedly, these trees use no water, and so we have some information on that. And the master gardeners will be there to explain how and when to plant them, which is pretty much going to be as soon as you get it, and what the watering requirements are, which are 0. So that'll be interesting. So if you know anybody interested, go online to our website, please register. We're capping it at 30 attendees. So those who are RSVP'd will get priority in seating and in the giveaway. So if you show up without a reservation, you could be turned away and you won't necessarily receive the giveaway. So gotta call the district or you need to go online and register.
What's the date for the class?
That's October 14th. And this did go out, well, it is going out in the October 1 bills, but it's been on our website as well. Yeah, but you look at our website, so, and we have some flyers. And it's been on social media as well. Upcoming outreach we have, you can come visit us at our Fun Days booth. So we'll have all of our departments there represented. Again, the compost workshop will be at the farmers market booths here and there throughout the rest of the year. I'll be providing a presentation at the Kiwanis meeting in November. They've asked me to come out. And then we're going to do a postcard mailer reminder in November to all district residents that have yet to complete the application. And I don't know if you have any questions at this time?
I know there's a lot of chitter chatter on missed pickups and things and not being able to get a bill credit. Do we have any info on that?
Yeah, they have to not just go on Facebook. They need to either call CR&R to get their billing issue resolved, and if they're not happy, call me and we'll escalate it and get it taken care of. I've been able to expedite some of these things. CR&R is still behind on getting these out. It's still, 3-4 weeks. They have brand new staff members that they're training concurrently with this rollout. They did get 2 new trucks. They're going to bring one of the new trucks for you to see. And as they get more staff and more trucks, things should move faster. But this is pretty big. I mean, that's 2,000 applications that have been input so far. And then all those service orders are generated. They're just waiting to be completed. So, but yeah, have them call.
I know.
We can
Thank
fix
you.
it.
That's why I asked.
Yeah.
All right. Any other questions? No? Okay.
Yes.
Oh, yes.
I was just curious on the numbers that you had for applications. You said 2311 total applications.
Yes.
So I'm curious if you have a guesstimate of how many missing people are there who haven't applied in some way?
So depending on which statistic you want to use, the census data, which indicates there's 7,242 households, it would be 7,242 minus the 2,311.
Okay.
If you go
So
off,
that would be the missing, the
yes, if you
almost
go-
5,000 in there?
yeah, if you go off the water customers, both Sheep Creek and the district, it's about 8,400. But again, that does include properties that have multiple meters on their accounts.
Right. Okay. Just curious. Thanks.
Yep.
All right, so we will move on to agenda item 6C, update on the proposed Civic Center and Phelan Park expansion. Mr. Cardenas. I don't think so.
You'll have to project.
Thanks, Sean. Excuse me. Take a drink. For the update on the Civic Center project. As far as the project and plans, there isn't much to update. What I do have an update is the grant funding for the EOC, the $2 million grant funding. There was a pause on the RFP to kind of get the contract, to kind of get the conditions for bidding on the project. That contract will outline the conditions for the bidding. Investment justification recently was approved by FEMA. I believe that was last week. That is one step of 2 more steps. The consultant is assisting in completing the environmental historic preservation, that's the AHP screening document, and the financial manager form workbook. It's a formal application. That is also in the process. Once that's submitted, EHP could take 4 to 6 weeks before the contract with Cal OES is received by the district. That we're looking probably sometime in December. And we kind of brought this up at the last meeting with Mr. Kennedy, and Kennedy and I have been back and forth on any updates. So depending on what that contract outlines, we could be changing gears on bidding this project, or we can continue moving forward with what we've already started. So the I guess I can put this in here as well. Last week, Monday, last minute, I was invited to a round table at Hellendale CSD. And it was a round table with the new director over at land use with the county. At the round table, there were 3 or 4 developers, realtor, and some of the community attendees. Everyone shared their struggles working with county, submitting plans, and I've heard stories on the inconsistency with plan checks, and specifically one in particular where 2 identical plans were submitted by Hellendale, came back with plan checks with one with 10 pages, one with 4. The difference is one went to county plan check, the other went with the consultant. Corrections are made and other eyes are put in. It's similar to what we've been experiencing with our project. Got to myself, which was a surprise because then I just had a list of things I wanted to share with our struggle with our Civic Center project. And I shared more than I think I should have, but then I kind of felt our frustrations, well, my frustrations with having to work with and having county staff and consultants understand our project when they keep changing staff on our project. The frustrations with part-time staffers that we have to wait for a response a week later because they're not there to respond within that a reasonable time frame. So I mentioned that we had 28 pending items for this project. It's a complex project because we have the 14-acre project, revision to a CUP. It's not a simple project. He asked, where are you with the 28? I said, I have 8 pending, but they're very minuscule. They're small. He goes, well, let me know what those are, and I'll kind of get you through. So sounds to me that there is some hope there. I'm optimistic on what he is going to do with the district, with the county. Reorganization, hiring new staff, letting those that retired come back part-time, go back into retirement, and just have this consistency. So far, what we've seen, specifically with Hellendale, and haven't used our cards yet, but I'm kind of waiting for that time when we get down to the contract. So that's all I have to share. The stars aligned, the moons, whatever, for me to be there. I was just grateful to be there. So I shared a little bit about the cannabis struggles and our land use on rural living and how somebody can just grow trees on 5-10 acres and an understanding of what the general plan is set up for, and county staff is not following it. So he's heard enough, and we'll just wait to get back with him if we need to. That's all I got for the Civic Center. The park project, CEQA has been circulated. I haven't gotten back with our senior planner on the response from the circulation. It just was completed probably a couple of weeks ago, so senior planner is also part-timer, and it's hard to get a hold of them. So it takes me a little bit.
Isn't it a 30-day review?
It was, yes.
So it should be halfway.
Oh, no, it's completed. We're like 2 weeks beyond the completion of the circulation. So I'm just curious to know what comments were made on the park. So that's all I got. Any questions?
No. No.
I always want to come here and be with some good news, and it's hard for me to be optimistic, but I think county has taught me, don't be optimistic, because we're going to come back with something that's just going to kick you down and crawl back to reporting the status on a project. So someday I'll come back with something good. Thank you.
Thank
Before
you.
we pass away.
All right, oh my goodness. Okay, so how do I follow that? Moving on to number 7, committee reports and comments. Engineering.
Engineering met last Wednesday and went over projects, went over existing conditions with the water system. Anything else?
No.
It was just general
Yeah.
review.
All right, finance.
Did not meet.
Okay, legislative.
We did not meet. I reported out the last time at the board meeting from the previous meeting.
Okay. And Park and Rec, we didn't meet again since the last time we reported. And waste and recycling?
We met last week and went over the budget for the solid waste study.
We received a proposal to do the rate analysis that CR&R has agreed to come up with the appropriate cost of service for the minimum required trash level for residential and commercial. And there is some number refining that needed to be done. We need to get CR&R to agree to pay for their share of the study, and then it'll be coming to the board for review and possible approval.
Okay,
And there's your update.
there you go. Thank you. All right, number 8, staff and general managers report. Anything to add to the report?
Just that I handed out a revised management report, so I got the data from CR&R, which was presented earlier tonight. Of note, in the customer data for solid waste and recycling, we do have 20 organics commercial accounts right now. And the school has one enormous organics dumpster at the high school site where they deal with all of the school lunches. So that's mainly what they're going to have. And then we're continuing to process exemptions for commercial for de minimis. I think we're more towards 35, 40 for now. A lot of churches that are getting exempt because they just don't have the volume to necessitate an organic service.
Okay.
If you don't mind, I had something to report. In the last couple of weeks, we've heard discussions about the Sheep Creek Wash Bridge. I had an opportunity to speak with the engineer that is working on that project and provided us with an update. County assessment is the bridge is intact. They're waiting for Caltrans inspection to kind of get in so they can kind of have something formal, but he says that there's nothing that shows that there's a big issue with it. There is a design for repair, which is the cavity that everybody sees on the footing of the bridge, to repair that, and also some street improvements, asphalt, paving and corrections. But they're expediting this project through for plan check, which is something kind of nice to have, right? They're going to go through the advertisement and hire a contractor. So they're going to go through the whole formality. So it could be a couple months. My question is to them was that if they were going to pause and wait for the expansion of Phelan Road from the 2 to 5 lanes, and that's always in somebody's mind, if that's what they're going to do is just wait. Absolutely not. He says this is something that it's high in a priority with the county. So after they have this design completed, he says it's almost complete, they should have this advertised and out for bid. So I don't know, maybe a couple months, maybe 3.
Do they know the definition of the word expedite?
It's a subjective word.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's their project, but don't really expedite it.
How slow it would be if it wasn't expedited.
If it wasn't their project.
I asked the question about Caltrans, and any bridges that span over 20 feet, there's a program for bridge inspection program that they're involved in. So that's how Caltrans was involved with the inspections. So they're the professionals, and that's who they lean on. So That's all I got to say for an update on
Thank
the
you.
bridge.
Yeah. Well, that was going to be my question because, you know, the anticipated start date just for the beginning of that project was July of '24. So I was hoping and praying we weren't waiting for the bridge for that.
And then that is that next phase. And then
Yeah.
the final phase, which is the completion, would be, they're barely into whatever percentage, they're years from that.
Right, right.
So,
Which, remember last meeting, we asked Sam about the street light on Clovis? That's actually included in that July of 2024 start project, so, yeah, gonna be a bit.
And they said it would be done this summer.
Nice.
And summer just went.
A little bit longer, a little bit. All right, moving on to number 9, director's reports. Start with Deborah.
I attended the Association of San Marino Community Service Districts monthly meeting, and they went over outreach with Riverside, a person from the Riverside DA and a couple of other agencies, and they went over outreaches for their Faces of Fentanyl project they did to give the public information to hopefully stop the issues we're having with fentanyl. And they gave information on how to best outreach the public that really gave some pointers that were interesting. And that's all I've done.
Thank you. Mark, anything?
Nothing to add.
All right, Chuck?
No comments.
I
Greg?
don't have any comments
No?
either.
All right, and I completely forgot to include my notes, but I also attended the ASB CSD dinner, so yeah, I'll include those next round. Let's see. All right, correspondence and information. Anything to add, Ms. Sevi?
No, I just wanted to note one item that was in the, or a couple items in here. We have ClickPay now, which if you remember, that is the bank transfer. So if you pay online through your bank's bill pay system, so not on our website, but through your bank, we're now getting the checks in 1 to 2 days rather than 2 to 3 weeks.
Nice.
So that should help our customers avoid unnecessary late penalties and make it easier to pay without any fees online. And then we do have a program right now. It's the Low Income Water Assistance Program. This is funded with grant funds, not district funds. And there's information in the packet on that, and it will be going out in the bills. And that is all.
Thank you. I think I might have to sign up for this apple pie baking class.
Yeah, and just note, the October kids baking class is full. These are for
Wow.
children.
Darn it.
And then the November one will open up in October, and the December baking class will open up for registration in November.
All right.
You can bake and bring it to the next board meeting.
Oh, yeah, yeah.
We are contemplating doing an adult workshop, so a
Yeah.
little bit more hands-on baking, start to finish. So we're going to work with the instructor of the kids class to come up with some, maybe some spring workshops.
Are we all full for the ladies' defense class on Saturday?
I don't think that one's full yet.
Awesome. Okay.
Yeah, so you can still sign up.
Good, good. All right, so we will move on to number 11. Were there any prior meeting action items?
Yeah, we're still working on the fuel storage item. That'll come to the board once that's ready.
Okay, and current meeting action items?
I have recorded none.
All right. So then we will set agenda for next meeting, which is October 11th. Does anyone have anything they would like to add?
Maybe in the future, we could bring up the adjudication of the basin, Mojave Water Agency, explain how that works, brief overview.
Sure.
Yeah, I think
Yeah.
that would be a good thing for our customers to understand why we're at where we're at with the water allocation and what happens.
Yeah, we can invite them out.
And if they could give a brief bit of the history of how it got to here.
Yeah.
Yeah,
For the entire
absolutely.
area as well, because I think a lot of people don't understand how the adjudication happened.
Yeah, great idea.
Awesome, thank you. All right, so with no further business before the board, we will adjourn at 6:14 PM. Thank you.